Hello, welcome to Gaming Network, welcome to Retro Game Super Leagues, made in conjunction with the Amiga re-review. This episode is going to be looking at all multi-sports games that were released on the Commodore Amiga to coincide with the California Games 2 video that I produced last Friday. This is the video where I'm going to go into more depth as to reasons why I placed the games where I did. So without further ado, let's just get on with it. So in all, I have 22 games to rank in this category. They're going to be ranked in the same way as previous videos. They're going to be ranked between essential, good, okay, poor or rubbish. But for this video only, I have renamed the top 3 gold, silver and bronze, because everything in those 3 categories is worth playing if you're a fan of these kind of games. Obviously the gold ones are the ones that are the cream of the crop that everyone should play. So for the first game, we have the aquatic games featuring James Pond and the Aquabats. I've already done a re-review on this one, but the idea of a sports game set within the James Pond universe is a really good one. The whole problem with the game is that it felt a little bit rushed in its development. While there are some fantastic events in it, namely the ones that more closely ape the track and field ones, like the 100-meter splash, there are other events that just go on far too long and feel like they don't quite meet their potential. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this under the good category, because it's definitely worth playing, but there's a few things holding it back from being essential. Next we have Arena, which was from all the way back in 1986 and was developed by Psygnosis. It was one of the first games that they ever made. Also one of the very first sports games that ever came out on the Amiga. I found it to be slow and jerky, virtually unplayable. Even reading the instructions didn't really help. So unless it's for nostalgic reasons, there's really no reason to play it. I'm going to put it straight in the rubbish category. Now next we come to the Amiga version of California Games, the first one. The Amiga version here was produced by Westwood, who were the people that made Command & Conquer and Blade Runner. When you directly compare this to the Commodore 64 version, the C64 version is easily the better one of the two, and you should probably just play that one instead if you want to play California Games. However, there's only really one dud event in the lot, and that's the roller skating. The half pipe is really fun. The frisbee event is really fun. The BMX event is surprisingly fun. It's not going to go any higher than the OK category though, because of how slow the Amiga version is. Next we come to California Games 2, which as I said before is the game that I covered in last week's re-review. So if you've watched that video, you'll know exactly what my feelings are on this one. It's essentially more of the same, but there's only 5 events this time, and of the 5 events there's only really 2 of them that are worth playing. It feels like they used up all the good sports in the first game. And this Amiga version is a poor conversion of what had come out on the PC previously. I'm going to put it in the poor category. Now next we have one of a number of games that came out in 1992, which actually led to Amiga Action having a sports game special in the summer of that year, because there were that many athletics games that came out. This was one of them. This is the Carl Lewis Challenge, which was the one that was published by Psygnosis and developed by Tech Software. The presentation isn't that bad overall, but I found that the playing area on screen was very, very small. Rather than waggling the joystick as fast as possible for the running events, it has a much more rhythmic approach. But the whole management training side of it feels like it's tacked on. Doesn't deserve to be all the way down in the poor category, but it's definitely not better than okay. And California Games is definitely the better game of the 2. Next up we have Daley Thompson's Olympic Challenge. Now this was from 1988. This was 4 years earlier than the Carl Lewis Challenge. This was Ocean Software's attempt to bring the Daley Thompson series into the 16-bit era. It rams its licenses down your throat, particularly LucasAid and Adidas. The fact that you have to choose your different Adidas shoes before each event is completely unnecessary. Like the Carl Lewis Challenge as well, it has a training section that doesn't really work. The training section is essentially 4 minutes of just solid waggling the joystick, so if you haven't got a broken joystick or a broken wrist or wrists of steel by the end of it, then you're probably doing it wrong. Quite how they expect it to then manage to go on and do 10 decathlon events after that is anyone's guess. It's better than the Carl Lewis challenge, I think, as long as you do skip the gym section. So that's going to go between Carl Lewis challenge and California Games, if I can get that to line up. There it is. Next up, we have España the Games 92, or the Games España 92, whichever way around you want to call it. This was the official Olympics game of the Barcelona Olympics from 1992, licensed to Ocean Software and developed by Creative Materials. It has a huge number of events to take part in, probably the most events of any game featured in this list, but good luck getting to any of them, as the menu screens are some of the worst menu screens I've seen in any game ever. You just have no idea what you're clicking on. Everything is just way too complicated, and the presentation overall is poor. The number of events that it has stops it from dropping into the rubbish category, but it's still going below California Games 2. Next, we come to the Games Summer Edition, which is one of the ones made by Epix, although the Amiga version was converted by a developer called the Code Monkeys. It's very well presented with a nice selection of events. It's got good use of 3D graphics in some of them, particularly the cycling. You can play through the events in any order that you want and play through any number of them. The archery is probably my favourite event of the lot. The track events are quite fun, but I found the gymnastics to be a bit confusing. This is one of the ones that's going to go in the good category, so but I think I would rather play the aquatic games than this one. Released later on that same year was the Games Winter Edition. Once again, not the Amiga version, not handled by Epix themselves, and this time handed out to FACS Entertainment Software, who are a developer that I've never heard of, and to be perfectly honest, I'm not surprised. This has some of the most woeful graphics I've seen, the worst graphics of any game in this list. All 7 of the events included look and play really, really badly. There's nothing here for anyone to make it worth playing, and this is going to go in the rubbish category, right down at the bottom. But because Arena is unplayable, I'm going to put this above that one. Next up, we come to International Championship Athletics, which was from a small independent publisher called Hawk. It is actually a full price release, despite the fact that it looks like a budget game. Perhaps the most inexplicable decision in the design process for this one is the fact that it doesn't have any multiplayer in it whatsoever. It's a single player game only. Although I suppose you could pass the joystick around amongst your friends when you're doing the event. It's got 16 track and field events to play through. None of them are especially terrible, but it doesn't deserve to go any higher than the OK category, and because of the lack of multiplayer, I'm going to put it below the Carl Lewis Challenge. Next up, we come to International Sports Challenge, which was published by Empire Interactive in 1992. This has got a different selection of events to what you would normally expect in a game like this. Every single one of them has got excellent graphics, but the ones with 3D graphics look particularly good. And I found that the show jumping and the marathon events offer something a little bit different from what you would normally get. The only thing that holds the game back as a whole is that some of the controls aren't as intuitive as they should be. But this definitely deserves to be up in the good category. I think it's going to go below the Games Summer Edition. Next game is Ski or Die, which was made by Electronic Arts in 1990. And this is essentially what you get if you attempted to make a snowbound version of California Games. It's got a good sense of fun, and the attitude is spot on. Bit disappointing that there are only 5 events to play, but all 5 of them are entertaining in their own way. The snowball fight in particular is I found to be highly amusing, and graphically it's very nice. I'm going to put this in the good category, and I think I will put it above International Sports Challenge. Now next up, we have 2 games in one. We've got Summer Games 1 and Summer Games 2. Now the Commodore 64 versions of these were released in 1984 and 1985 respectively. The Amiga versions didn't come out until 1992, and then they were only available as part of the Mega Sports compilation released by US Gold. They were both converted by Creative Materials, who did California Games 2 and the games España 92. It's nice that both of these games did get a release on the Amiga. Even if all the developers did was spruce up the graphics a little bit, the gameplay is virtually identical. What I did like is the fact that the game features an option to play through all of the events from Summer Games 1 and 2 as though they're one long game, and that works quite nicely. Summer Games 1 is the better one of the two, just because it has the better events in it, and these are both going to go in the OK category, but whereabouts? I'd say that they're both better than Daley Thompson's Olympic Challenge, so I'm going to put them both above that and below California Games. Next up, we have Summer Olympiad, which was actually one of the games that I got free with my Atari ST back in the day, but it's one that I sought on the Amiga as well because it's that good. There's only 5 events, but all 5 of them feature some of the best graphics that you will see in a game of this type. All 5 of the events are worth playing in their own way, even if the fencing and the 110 meters hurdles aren't quite as much fun as the others, but the skeet shooting and the diving are absolutely superb. Can I justify putting this game in the essential category when it has one event in particular that I would happily play over and over again? Well, it is my list after all, so yes, I can. I'm going to whack this in the essential category. Summer Olympiad, definitely worth playing. Next up is Summer Olympics with an X, which came out in 1994, and this was a CD32 only release. So getting it to work on the A500 Mini was quite tricky, but you'll be happy that you did. This has some fantastic cartoon presentation, which makes it stand out from every single other game that's listed in this category. It has a nice option to randomize the order of the events that you play through, so that when you play a competition, you never know what's going to come next. Waggling is not particularly good on the CD32 pad because you actually had to just press the 2 shoulder buttons to alternate your left and right. That didn't work quite as well as you would hope. Most of the events don't really offer anything new, apart from the archery, the boxing, and the canoeing and the skeet shooting, which are all really fun. Not quite good enough to be in the essential category, but I'm going to stick it above the aquatic games in the good category. Next up, we have Super Sport Challenge, which was from French developer Microids. While the graphics aren't great in terms of their detail, the fact that it has an isometric view makes it look interesting and makes it stand out. What also makes the game stand out is that the developers made a choice to not have you waggle a joystick as fast as possible in order to run. It's an odd choice, and the stamina system works reasonably well, but it works better for the field events like your jumping and your throwing than it does for the running. So I can't really put this any higher than OK. I'm going to stick it below the Carl Lewis Challenge because that has a rhythmic control method as well, but that one, it works slightly better. Next we have Epyx's Winter Games, which came out in 1987 on the Amiga, and I remember playing the Commodore 64 and Spectrum versions of this game over and over again with my friends. The Amiga version is not an especially great conversion, but it is better than most. Out of all the events included in it, I think the biathlon is still the most enjoyable out of the lot, and the speed skating is quite nice as well because you have to keep a rhythm rather than waggle as fast as possible. It's definitely not poor. I think this one's going to go in the OK category as well. And I'm going to put this above the Carl Lewis Challenge. Next up we have Winter Olympiad, which is, as the name suggests, from the same development team as Summer Olympiad. And so just like that game, it's got some absolutely fantastic presentation. None of the events in it outstay their welcome particularly, and they all offer a nice challenge. The disappointing side of it is that there are only 5. And out of the 5, the bobsleigh is probably the weak link. So Summer Olympiad is definitely better. I'm going to whack this in the good category though, in the silver medal titles. I'd rather play this than International Sports Challenge, but Ski or Die has a greater sense of fun. Next up, we have Winter Olympics Lillehammer 94, which was the official game of those Winter Olympics, published by US Gold. It's got some good presentation and lots of events to play. One thing that I particularly liked about it was the fact that the biathlon event, which is a long multi-stage event, you actually play through between the other events. So as you're playing through the Olympics, you'll do the ski jump, then a bit of the biathlon, then you'll do the downhill skiing, then another bit of the biathlon, and that worked really, really nicely. The events included do vary quite a lot in quality though. So whereas the downhill skiing is great, the speed skating is not. So that's going to stop it from being in the good category. Because of how good it is when it's at its best, I'm going to stick it in okay. Fairly high up though. It's definitely better. I'd probably rather play this than Winter Games. And yeah, I'm going to stick it below California Games. Next up, we have Winter Super Sports 92, which was from Flare Software. Doesn't have a huge number of events included, but the ones that it does have are all presented quite well. The sense of speed that you get in the bobsleigh and the luge is better than other games in this category. The one event that stands out over all the others though is the Skidoo racing, which actually plays like an overhead racing game. Plays a bit like Team 17's all-terrain racing, although it could do with an on-screen map so that you actually know where you're supposed to be going. I think this deserves a silver medal. I think this is going to go in the good category, but I'm going to stick it at the bottom of that category, just below International Sports Challenge. And so the final game on the list is Epic's World Games, which as far as games in the multi-sports category are concerned is probably the most unique game of the lot, as the events that it includes are not available anywhere else. One particularly nice touch is that on the loading screens for each event, it gives you all the information about the sport and its historical significance to the country that it comes from. Like all of the games from Epic's, it does have a good sense of fun with some of the animations that happen. I'd say this is probably the best game released by Epic's on the Amiga. So in that sense, it's going to have to go above the game's Summer Edition, and probably above Aquatic Games as well. So there you have it. That's all 22 games in this category ranked. If you disagree with where I've placed anything here, then please do let me know in the comments how you'd rank them. If there's any games that I've missed, then also let me know about those as well, because these are all the ones that I have played, and I don't think there's anything that I've missed. There's going to be another Super League like this one in 2 weeks' time, and if you want to find out what category that I'm going to be covering then, tune in to next week's re-review, which will reveal all. So thank you for watching. Until next time, happy retro gaming, and I'll see you soon.